What do you know about Pope John Paul II?
Not a lot. Not a lot at all.
Not much at all, really, actually. So, there's nothing I can say there.
That he was our Pope. That's much, you don't really hear. He's not really public enough to know about him.
Nothing really, except that I have a little Popener, like a bottle opener with the old Pope on it.
Well, I know he's the Pope for a long time right now, and he just passed away.
You hear how he was involved in all facets of life and how he was such a good man.
He was the Pope, passed away.
He was very involved in the youth and encouraged that.
He really cared about everyone, and he was a really great Pope.
He brought down communism, which was a big thing for Europe, so.
He did a lot for the teens. He was very concerned about them. He was a good Pope.
He was from Poland, and that he was actually the Pope for a really long time after a Pope that died very quickly, and he really connected with the youth a lot, which I think is a really great thing.
I know that he was a good man. He came in after Pope John Paul I died. He took his name. He was a good guy. He tried to do a lot. I feel like he was a little bit too conservative on a few issues. The fact that he doesn't allow women to become priests.
And he was all about against abortion and the death penalty and euthanasia and mercy killing. So it was really great that he really cared about everyone's life.
I know that he was just an awesome man.
I've never seen any other Pope, but he's the best. They should make him Saint of Travels, because he travels so much.
Born Karol Joseph Wojtyła in Wadowice, Poland, Pope John Paul II was the first Polish pope to head the Roman Catholic Church.
A remarkable and holy man, Pope John Paul was the first pope to visit a synagogue and a mosque.
As a young man, he was a bright student, an ardent gymnast, a soccer goalie, and enjoyed acting.
He was the most traveled pope in history. He visited every continent except for Antarctica.
He served as our pope for 26 years, and on April 2nd, 2005, at the age of 84, he died.
He leaves us with a legacy of love and peace.
He had a special fondness for young people, and in 1985 established World Youth Day,
an international observance for young people in the church, which takes place every other year.
Needless to say, he has had a tremendous effect on young people. That's what we'll be talking about today, Pope John Paul II and his impact on young people. Hi everyone, I'm Jack.
And I'm Catherine.
And this is Realfaith TV. The teens we met on the street had mixed views about the Pope.
A few were unfamiliar with him, while others felt his connection with young people.
We'll talk with them again later in the show and meet our studio guests.
But first, let's meet our spotlight guest, Carolyn, who has attended 3 World Youth Days.
She has had a few incredible experiences to share with us.
But first, she will tell us what she knows about Pope John Paul II.
I remember reading after his death that he was referred to as being a lion, and how I just thought that that was so fitting, just because he was just such a fierce leader within the Catholic Church, and never let popularity or politics get in the way of his teachings and of ultimately God's teachings of the truth. Even remembering of when he went to go and visit Fidel Castro in June of '89, and his ability to be able to see the human side of everyone. Here was Castro, who was so closed-hearted, how when Pope John Paul came, how he ended up getting out of his army clerics, and how he greeted Pope John Paul II in a suit, and how he pulled that humanness out of you, and how he asked Castro to come and visit the people in the country with him, and just didn't allow him to sit off to the side, wanting him to draw that out so that he was able to see his own people and to hopefully develop a love for them the way that Pope John Paul loved them. He just had such a calling to love everyone and to make sure that we all knew that we were in that image and likeness of Christ, and that he demanded us to see that within each other, because he saw that within each of us. And regardless of who you are, where you're from, if you have a disability, if you're an infant, we know how much he loved the young children and the babies that he would always see and baptize, and I just think that that's what draws the young people to him. He's almost like a grandfather, somebody that you can just look up to and love, and know that they're going to love you regardless of what you do. When you think of over the past 20 years, how he traveled to 117 different trips to 150 different countries, He made himself known, and he wanted the Word of God known, and I think that was one of the major influences. In 1983, Marvel Comics ended up doing a biography on him, and when you look at all of the musicians and the rock stars and how they loved his humanitarian work, and he was visible. He wanted to be out there. He wanted the church and he wanted Christ to be seen.
That's pretty wild that Marvel Comics published a biography on the Pope.
Yeah, I think that's fitting, because he was a superhero of sorts. He's right up there with Superman and some of the others.
Yeah, because he was a superhero. Let's meet our studio guests and find out what they know about Pope John Paul.
Okay, they are Matt, Kristen, Caitlin, Marissa, and Anthony.
So, what do you know about Pope John Paul II?
Well, he really valued young people because he knew that they were the future of the church. And he also, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but he was just he was a huge celebrity. He was like a rock star.
Yeah, I know what you mean. He also wrote the Luminous Mysteries for the Rosary because he was really dedicated to Holy Mother.
I know he spoke 26 languages, 22 of which he was fluent in.
Well, what I know about him is I know he helped bring down communism.
Definitely. Well, was there anything that Carolyn or maybe one of the teens on the street shared that surprised or impressed you about the Pope?
That he had a biography written about him in Marvel Comics. I did not know that. That's really awesome because it shows his, I guess, youthness maybe, and showing how he can be written about anywhere.
That's so cool because me and my brother are both
we're
huge
big
comic
fans, and we didn't even know that.
It's pretty sweet. I'm gonna have to go buy that.
Yeah. No, I was really impressed about how many languages he spoke. And I mean, just in you saying that, that just goes to show how dedicated he was to something, something like that, which could help so many people.
Yeah, I mean, we all take, some of us take a language at school and we think that's hard enough, we're studying all night for a test, and then, this guy speaks 26 languages. That's amazing.
Yeah, he was a brilliant man.
And how long he was Pope for? Almost 30 years. That's a long time. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. While speaking in Santiago, Spain, Pope John Paul II said to the young people, "Do not be afraid to be holy.
Have the courage and humility to present yourselves to the world determined to be holy.
Since full, true freedom is born from holiness."
He believed in us and always encouraged us to be followers of Jesus.
Many people who have seen him in person have felt the presence of holiness in him.
Let's find out then if the teens on the street had this impression, if Pope John Paul II was a good and holy man.
Let's check it out.
Did you find him to be a good and holy man? Why or why not?
I guess he was a good man, but he believed differently than I do.
Yeah, because you're the Pope for a reason, so, you should be, good and holy.
I do, because if he wasn't a good and holy man, he wouldn't have been Pope.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think you have to be somewhat holy to be the Pope.
He seemed a cool guy, and he was a man's man too when he was younger, so that was pretty cool.
I did find him to be a holy man because he did help so many people, and he showed his faith all the time.
Yeah, I think he was a good and holy man. He was nice. He tried to help better the world in any way possible. He tried to talk with the president, try to develop peace where possible, and talk down about war and acts of violence.
It'd be kind of silly if I said he wasn't a holy man, because when he passed away, God bless him. Even China were saying maybe they should let their Catholic worshipers out in the streets. So he was a really big historical figure and spiritual figure in the eyes of not only those who believed in him, but those who just respect him as a person.
It seems that many of the teens in the street thought that Pope John Paul was a holy and good man, even if they weren't too familiar with him or even the Roman Catholic Church.
I think that was just the kind of man he was, and part of why he's considered holy, because he was respected by people of other faiths, because he cared about all people, especially the poor and the suffering.
So what do you guys think? Do you think that Pope John Paul II was holy? What were some of the things that you think you would equate with holiness that he did?
Yeah, he was a very holy man. He cared a lot about people, especially the poor and the suffering. He was very kind and compassionate, just a very Christ-like figure.
It would be it'd be silly to say that he wasn't holy. One example would be when he was assassinated, attempted assassinated, and right after he got out of the hospital, he went to the prison and he forgave the guy. You know, that takes a lot of courage, and you need to be pretty holy to do something like that.
You have to be like really, you have to have God in your heart in order to really do something like that. That's really over the top. Yeah.
I like the way he, I just thought it was holy the way he connected with everybody. And he kind of, like, he would come and he wouldn't just stay aloof and everything. He'd be in there with the people and everything. Just, he's nice to everybody. It was just, that just
like
struck
make you
me
feel
as,
so good. Just like looking at him.
Yeah.
I think Catherine said he visited almost all of the continents, so that means that he must have cared about everyone.
I think it's so remarkable how he went to so many different places, and he didn't care if the people, where they were from, how rich or how poor they were, if they were sick. He would help anyone, kind of like Jesus, you know? Pope John Paul II called the youth to be active in the church.
In 1999, in St. Louis, he said, "You are ready for what Christ wants of you now."
He wants you, all of you, to be the light of the world.
As young people can be light.
It is time to let your light shine.
What kind of an impact did he have on the youth of today?
That's what we asked the teens on the street.
Let's check it out.
Personally, he didn't have much of an impact on me because of the way he believes is different, but the people that believed in him and like the way he believes, I'm sure they probably benefited from it.
I think youth really doesn't look up to those type of figures. They're too busy. With our generation, it's a little bit different now. We don't look up to spiritual figures like they used to do. Now it's more like we're gonna look up to like an actor or a musician and stuff like that.
He was a good role model to people, and even though the youth of today might not know him as well, I think he was still somebody that's needed in people's lives.
I think he was like a father, I guess, to everyone who's Catholic, because he left and then people were just really upset. And I never really thought of it that way because Baptists don't really have a father of their religion.
He just loved the youth, so if anyone's gonna miss him, it's gonna be the youth of the world. So, you know, like me included, he's gonna be missed.
I know with my Catholic friends, like, we've all looked up to him a lot.
I do believe he was at the last World Youth Day in Canada, and I'm sure when children and adults alike went to that, they met him and their faith grew stronger.
I think he treated the youth of today excellently. He treated them with the respect they deserve, and he encouraged the faith through families.
I think he's getting us more involved in the Catholic community.
The youth is now like really strong in their faith, and he impacted them to live out their faith.
He just set a good example for all the people in the church.
He was a great leader and inspiration to all of us.
He took a lot of pride in the Christian youth.
I know that my two older sisters went to World Youth Day, and they said it like there was so many people there, and it just like really how he reached out to the youth and stuff. Like, it's great.
I agree. I think Pope John Paul had a great impact on us.
Carolyn, our spotlight guest, also agrees.
Next, she tells us what kind of an impact she thinks Pope John Paul II had on the youth of today.
She also shares the impact he had on her when she was 17 and attending her first World Youth Day in Denver, Colorado in 1993.
I think that in a world that constantly and continuously lies to our young people, that he has been the one solid voice of truth that continues to speak truth to our young people. And I think that they admire him for that, that he doesn't and the church doesn't waver on teachings to fit society. When you think of the 26 years and how the world has changed, and how his papacy and how the church doesn't change and the message doesn't change because God's message doesn't change. And I think that the young people are able to see that in him and that they respect that in him. The first time that I saw Pope John Paul II was in the year 1993 when I was 17 in Denver, Colorado. That was the first World Youth Day that I had attended. And even going at that time, I didn't get it. I didn't understand. I knew the significance of him, but I didn't understand the whole picture. And even one of the priests that I had traveled with basically told me that I didn't get it. When I was asking him why he was crying, why the priest was crying when the Pope came in, and he said, if you don't understand it, you know, before the end of this trip you will, because that was at the first welcoming ceremony of the Pope. And sure enough, by the time we made that last hike in, which was the last day that we spent with the Pope, I was able to feel the emotion and the enormity of what it was that we were all participating in. Still had a long way to go in growth, but again, it was really just the beginning of what I was able to see. After the World Youth Day, I started to teach GCD. I got involved more in the high school program at my church, which is the in-home program that's led by Donald Norbut, my brother. He got me more involved with the high school students there. And then from that point on, it kind of changed me a little bit.
So do you guys think that Pope John Paul II had a great impact on the youth of today?
I think that while he was alive, I don't think that teens really, I don't want to say they didn't pay attention to him, but it really didn't really hit him like of his importance. Now that unfortunately it took his death to give all this publicity and everything, and kids now, like, they want to see more about him. Like they say, oh, I want to read this, I want to read that about him. It's like it's opened up to them.
I don't know. I think I have to disagree a little, because when he was alive, he had all these World Youth Days, and like over thousands of young adults and teenagers that went to see him. And I know he's had a big impact on like my youth group, where I go to church, because like we talk about him a lot. And I don't know. I think he did have a big impact on the youth today.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think he really encouraged the youth to practice their Catholic faith. And he wasn't like the popes of before. Like, he would take pictures with the young people. He would hug them, and the popes before never did that. He didn't care that the cameras were there, and he had a huge impact.
I think he made the church like more accessible to the young people of today. He kind of opened it up and said, it's okay, come on, come in, we accept you and everything. It was kind of, and he reached out, he made that first step so that the young people could start coming towards the church and everything.
Yeah, because he knew sorry.
Oh no, that's okay.
Thanks. He listened to us because he knew that we were the future of the church.
Definitely. I'm not so sure that every Christian child knew so much about the Pope and his life, but I definitely know that he did have an impact, because all the youth ministries we have now, I don't think we'd have them if it wasn't for the things he did, like, youth groups and how easy it is for the teenagers to become involved with the church. I think that's all due to him.
I think that we should have been taught, like when we were younger, more about the Pope's life, instead of like, we were kind of just like, oh yeah, he's the Pope, and he travels around the world a little bit. Yeah, that's him. We should have been taught more about his life, like what he did.
Because I think the Pope, he was one of those guys who leads by actions rather than words.
Yeah.
He went out and did stuff rather than just like sit at home and preach it. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
he was out there in the front lines and everything. I think that was part of what made him so great. He wasn't afraid to just go out there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he was a very unique Pope. No other Pope was like him.
So, has Pope John Paul II made any kind of impact on your life?
That's what we asked the teens on the street.
Let's check it out.
Can you share any ways in which he touched your life or influenced you?
No.
Nah, not really, except that most of my friends were absent the day after to go to the Mass. That's about it.
I unfortunately wasn't that influenced by him, but I think he was a good guy, just like any other world figure.
I know we studied him a lot in my religion class, and we just studied his gospel of life, and it was just amazing, like, seeing how much he cared about every single life.
I'm going to World Youth Day this summer because of him, because he really encouraged the youth to get involved.
He set the stage for everyone else. He set the standard, and if we follow and live up to him, like what he did and everything, then we'll be good.
He touched like everyone in a way that no other pope in history could have, so it's going to be really hard to replace him.
So I haven't really met him. I'm not sure like specific things that he's done to influence my life, but just in general, because growing up he was the only pope that I ever knew, so it was a hard loss when he actually died.
Not like directly, I don't think, but like learning about him really changed me because he had such like a hard life. So I guess you could say that his journey inspired me also.
Personally, I don't know if he touched my life that much, but just hearing the blessings that he's given for like other family members that were lost on September 11th because my aunt was, and just hearing that, even though my aunt wasn't a practicing Catholic, it touched me. It definitely touched me.
I became Catholic, and I joined the Catholic Church after my brother had passed away, and I'd seen him on TV like during a mass. So
Just watching a couple of his speeches and stuff showed me that he's trying to get teens involved and that God's there for the younger people in the world as much as he is for practicing Catholics who have been doing it for years.
Carolyn also has found that Pope John Paul II impacted her in a personal way.
Next, she shares two very profound experiences she had during World Youth Days in Rome in 2000 and in Toronto in 2003.
I'd have to say that the year 2000 in Rome was the most memorable World Youth Day that I attended. I went there with more of a closed heart, and to be honest, I was going because it was a vacation in Rome, and I ended up coming out with just an unbelievable love for God. I was at a point in my life going into that, again, where I was not leading the holiest of lives. As most people do in early 20s, mid-20s, you know, we have a tendency to fall away from the church, and being able to go there and open up my heart a little bit, God was able to use that in a way that within a couple of months of being back, I then ended up joining a number of prayer groups and have been able to lead some of those groups and have just continuously become active and just trying to spread the news. One of the most significant things about Toronto that I remember is the morning that we woke up, which was the last morning mass that we had with the Pope. We woke up to a significantly large thunderstorm, and it poured, and we had no umbrellas, there was no covering, nothing, and we were all pretty wet, we were all drenched, but again, having the excitement of knowing that he was coming and that it was going to be our last day with him, and as soon as he hit the stage, there was just an enormous wind that just rushed through the field, and it was the Holy Spirit, you know, just coming down, and within, you know, 20 minutes to a half hour, what was dripping wet was completely dry, and it was just amazing. When the wind started to pick up, you know, people were thinking kind of just, I think that it was more of just a freakish thing, but as it continued to get stronger and stronger, and people were excited. Yeah, the presence was definitely very strong at that point. You knew that there was something much larger going on than even being right there.
The presence that she felt from the weather, being around where the Pope was at World Youth Day, it must have been so powerful. I mean, she articulated it well, but I know I felt the same sort of presence when I went to a Night of Malta Mass induction. And the Pope wasn't there, but there were lots of cardinals and bishops, and the sense that she got from the weather, I definitely got from being surrounded by all these religious authority figures. And it's so powerful, the feeling of all these different kinds of people coming together for God. It's just incredible.
I don't really have like a personal experience with the Pope, but at one of my youth group meetings, we showed a video about the Pope, and someone wasn't really paying attention and didn't really care about the video, but we actually got this person to like sit down and watch it. And he got such a, I guess, like a feeling of being overwhelmed of like his life, and just was really touched on everything that happened. So.
One of the sisters at my school saw the Pope at Giant Stadium, and she described like exactly how Carolyn described her feeling of like sort of a godly presence.
So, has the Pope had like an impact on your life?
Well, not a real impact, but it's not like I met him personally. But I mean, just by seeing him on a TV special, like a documentary on some like History Channel or something like that, Discovery Channel, and it just, the way I see him do things, it's like miraculous. The way he acts, the way he talks, the way he does things around the world, just by like visiting the United States in '93, 2002. Oh, not 2002. What am I talking about? And it just shows you how much he like traveled and did everything, and it really like touches you and makes you feel like, wow, I really want to do stuff like that, but I'm probably not.
To me, it's kind of like he has the same impact that Gandhi or Mother Teresa had, you know, where you look at their actions and what they've done with your life, with their life, and you use it as a model for your own, you know. So it's kind of like, I never met him personally or even like saw him at a distance. I saw him on TV and stuff, but I just use the way he was such a good person and so holy that like I use that to model my life after.
And, you know, something that impacted me is just, you know, he's not like sent from God or anything. He's just an ordinary guy. And, you know, it just shows you that, you know, an ordinary guy can do all these incredible things, you know?
Absolutely. Pope John Paul II was a living example of a true disciple of Christ, and he challenged us and encouraged us to live Christian lives.
He said, "Do not be afraid of Christ. Trust him completely."
He alone has the words of eternal life. Christ never lets us down.
He called us to service when he said, "Jesus invites us to love the poor."
Because they should be given special attention because of their vulnerability.
And he fostered hope in us when he said, "Christ freed Peter from the fear which had seized him on the stormy lake."
Christ enables us too to overcome the difficult moments in life.
If with faith and hope we turn to him and ask his help.
What has been your experience with Pope John Paul II?
What will you remember most about him?
We want to know.
Contact us through our website.
The address is www.realfaithtv.com.
Or you can call us at 609-406-7402.
And we leave you with this final quote from Pope John Paul II. In 1987, during a satellite youth forum called the Papal Space Bridge in Los Angeles, California, he said,
"My dear young friends, I pray your faith in Christ will always be lively and strong.
This way you will always be ready to tell others the reason for your hope.
You will be messengers of hope for the world."
Thanks for watching.
We'll see you next time on Real Faith TV.
God bless.